On July 2, 1943, at the Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily, a German pilot flying a Focke-Wulf 190 never saw the danger coming. A P-40 Warhawk dropped out of the sun, its machine guns ripping through the German fighter before the pilot even knew he was under attack. The aircraft spiraled into the Sicilian countryside, trailing smoke all the way down. The American pilot who scored the kill was First Lieutenant Charles B. Hall, a 22-year-old from Brazil, Indiana, and in that moment he did something the Luftwaffe believed was impossible. A black pilot had just shot down one of their frontline fighters. The swastika that Hall painted on the side of his P-40 afterward was only the first of 112 enemy aircraft that would fall to the men Germany would soon refer to as the Schwarze Vogelmenschen, the Black Birdmen. Everything about their existence contradicted Nazi ideology. In Hitler's Germany, black people were classified as subhuman, incapable of intelligence, incapable of courage, and certainly incapable of mastering complex machines. The Nuremberg laws had outlawed marriages between Germans and people of African descent. Yet, over the skies of Europe, a group of black American pilots was about to dismantle those beliefs, one dogfight at a time. What the German pilots didn't know as they climbed to intercept American bombers in 1943 was that many of the airplanes they were chasing were being protected by some of the most rigorously trained and highly motivated pilots in the entire United States Army Air Forces. These were men who had overcome barriers their white counterparts never faced, who had trained longer, been tested harder, and carried an extra burden into combat. They weren't just fighting for their country, they were fighting to prove the ability of an entire race in a world that doubted them. Their combat record would soon speak louder than anyone's expectations. More than 15,000 combat sorties, 1,578 missions, 112 confirmed aerial victories, and a bomber escort protection rate that surpassed many white fighter groups. Numbers like these would eventually force even committed Nazi ideologues to face the truth. Their racial theories were collapsing in the very skies they claimed to dominate. But the story of how the Tuskegee Airmen reached that moment began long before they fired a shot. It began in the segregated United States, where official military policy declared that black Americans lacked the intelligence and character required for technical aviation roles. In 1925, the U.S. Army War College published a report claiming that black soldiers were inherently inferior in mentality and courage compared to whites. It was a document that had shaped military thinking for years. Yet even as those words were being printed, black Americans were already disproving them. Eugene Bullard flew combat missions for France in World War I because no American unit would take him. Bessie Coleman earned her pilot's license in France in 1921 after every American flight school turned her away. By the 1930s, aviation schools in Chicago and elsewhere were training black pilots who demonstrated that flying skill had nothing to do with skin color. As the world moved closer to war, civil rights leaders increased the pressure. Walter White, Philip Randolph, William Hastie, and others challenged the military and the White House directly. Black newspapers ran campaigns asking how America could fight for democracy abroad while denying it at home. Their voices pushed Congress to pass Public Law 18 in 1939, requiring at least one aviation school to train black pilots. It was a small opening, but it was enough. When Roosevelt ran for his third term in 1940, he needed black votes in northern cities. The War Department responded by announcing the creation of an all-black flying unit, the 99th Pursuit Squadron, but the announcement came with an insult attached. The squadron was described as an experiment, a test case to see whether black men could even be trained as combat pilots. It was Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., who understood the full weight of that word. A silent, disciplined officer who had endured 4 years at West Point without a single white cadet speaking to him outside official duties, Davis now found himself leading 26 black pilots into a war where every success or failure would be judged through the lens of race. When the 99th arrived in North Africa in April 1943, their white commanding officer, Colonel William Momier, doubted them from the start. He assigned them secondary missions avoiding real combat. When they didn't deliver immediate extraordinary results, he claimed it proved his point. But the Tuskegee aviators didn't break under pressure. They didn't complain. They flew what they were given, and when they finally got their chance in real combat, they delivered. The turning point began with their first missions over the Mediterranean and then erupted into history on that July morning when Charles Hall shot down his first enemy fighter. As Hall climbed out of his plane, the entire base erupted in celebration. Black ground crews who had endured months of disrespect finally had an answer for every slur and every doubt. Hall's kill wasn't just a victory for him, it was a victory for everyone who had been told they didn't belong in the cockpit of a fighter plane. This was only the beginning. By January 1944, the 99th Fighter Squadron had been in combat for 7 months. They had flown dozens of missions, protected bombers, and proven themselves under fire. But Colonel Momia, still determined to see them fail, filed a damaging report accusing them of lacking aggressiveness. He recommended they be removed from combat entirely. His report reached General Henry Hap Arnold, the commander of the entire Army Air Forces. And for a moment, the entire Tuskegee experiment stood on the edge of being shut down. Then came Anzio. On January 27, 1944, the Luftwaffe launched massive air assaults against Allied forces trying to hold the beachhead at Anzio, Italy. 15 pilots of the 99th, flying worn-out P-40 Warhawks, climbed into the air to intercept German fighters that were newer, faster, and more powerful. Focke-Wulf 190 seconds and Messerschmitt 109 seconds dove into the battlefield, confident that the Americans protecting the beach couldn't stop them. But the Tuskegee pilots did what they had trained to do. They held formation, they protected the Allied ground troops, and they fought with a determination that silenced every doubt about their ability. Across 2 days of brutal combat, the 99th shot down multiple German fighters. Charles Hall added 2 more kills to his record. When the smoke cleared, operational analysis showed that the 99th had not only performed as well as white squadrons, they had outperformed many of them. The War Department studied the numbers. The recommendation to remove them from combat collapsed, and the Tuskegee Airmen remained in the fight. Their greatest chapter began a few months later, when they received orders that would change everything. In May 1944, the new 332nd Fighter Group was formed by combining the 99th with 3 newly trained squadrons. They were now part of the 15th Air Force. And their new job was the most dangerous assignment in the sky, escorting heavy bombers deep into Nazi Germany. Colonel Benjamin Davis called his men together at Ramitelli Airfield in Italy. He told them their mission was not to become aces. Their mission was to bring the bombers home. No chasing enemy fighters, no breaking formation for personal glory. Every bomber they saved mattered more than every German aircraft they could shoot down. This philosophy would define them forever. That same summer, the Army Air Forces introduced bright identification colors to help bomber crews recognize fighter groups. Most units painted stripes